Oh, we're live. That 30 seconds was not 30 seconds, Nestor. Thanks. No, I'm just kidding. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Generation Orange. Yet again, another episode. Feels like we have one every week. At least for some of us, Mark. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Mark is very focused on something over there.
All right, man. Yeah. What's up, guys? How y'all doing? I know y'all missed me last week. I tried to tune in. I saw Sean up there struggling a little bit, but you know, he carried the load pretty good.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, damn, that was cold. Nah, you're good. It was, it is unique and a struggle when you're solo hosting. It is a different beast entirely because any pause in like audio is like complete dead air. There's nobody to fill that, that space. And so, you and I have built a good rapport over time. I am, trust me, I am appreciative of you, Mark. Welcome back. As has been noted in chat, happy belated birthday. I would sing you happy birthday, but our numbers are already not all that great to begin with this week. So I think I'm going to nix that idea and just wish you a happy belated birthday.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you, guys. Yeah, last week it was not because of the birthday work. Unfortunately, we got in the way a little bit last week, last Wednesday. Then obviously, after work, I kind of celebrated my birthday a little bit early. So I was like, you know what? Let me just tell the guys I can't make it because it was gonna be I was gonna be cutting it close. So, but thank you guys. I appreciate all the all the birthday wishes and all that good stuff. Now there won't be no kissing, COVID. Unfortunately. But yeah, man. I mean, you should have had Nestor come in, from as the voice of God, from the back cave,
I did ask. The offer was put out there, but I think Nestor likes his kind of behind the scenes role. He had other ideas. He says it's not his thing, but he's a streamer at heart, and I do feel like he would have had a lot to offer. He did in chat, as did everybody else in chat. Thankfully, that was the only thing that made me help me get through the show, because that was tough.
It was gonna interrupt his Rocket League, So
yeah, he's probably playing Rocket League. You did say something, Nestor. I saw at least one message from you. I'm pretty sure in chat. Sergio was active though, a little bit. But man, we had a busy crowd, all things considered. A lot of questions were coming in and a lot of things got discussed. But this week, there's kind of one big focus this week, and it's really not a surprise that this is going to be the focus of the show. But this week, we're gonna talk and heavily focus on kind of the big subject and topic right now, which, as everybody knows, I'm pretty sure in chat, is the CBA and this looming lockout potentially. I know, Mark, you had a Twitter poll that ran today that was tied to that.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
it's the big thing right now, and I think we need to address it. We need to talk about it, and for any of our listeners slash live tuner inners, if you will, for any of those guys and gals. If you don't know what's going on, we'll be happy to fill you in and kind of let you know the lowdown on everything. But it's not
Yeah,
looking good.
yeah. So for obviously, guys, I try to be constant with it, but every time we have a show or when I know ahead of time that we're gonna have a show, I try to throw up the poll question of the day. And obviously, today's poll question has to do a lot with what the big elephant in the room is. Obviously, the dark cloud looming over MLS right now, and that's the CBA talks and labor talks and all that good stuff. So, without further ado, the poll question of the day was, so obviously with the big news and the league. Sorry, so obviously the big news in the league is whether or not there will be a lockout of the season. 55% of you say there won't be a lockout. 45% of you say there will be a lockout, which is pretty 50-50, obviously. It's pretty close. A couple of you guys mentioned on the comments. I know at Brenner Out says, unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lockout, which the owners would just fully guarantee salaries for 2021. That shouldn't have to come with a concession for the player side. At Ryan Lefebvre, sorry if I mispronounced that. For sure, going to be a lockout. The players don't want to lose negotiations before the 2026 World Cup, but of course, the owners want to capitalize as much as they can because of that World Cup. And I think the owners will win. Players don't have enough money in the bank to hold. And one more before we carry on. At Siddlestam, again, sorry if I butchered your handle. Sam Sisley and Paul Tenorio from The Athletic have recently written articles about the pros and cons of both sides, owners and MLSPA. Based on their work, I say a lockout seems more likely than not. I feel worse for stadium workers than the players.
Yeah, I feel I feel that sentiment is pretty on point. That the players are going to feel it. We I think we tend to view the players as superstar athletes and that sort of thing. But the average salary in MLS, it is, and to some of us, this is a lot of money. It's a lot of money to me. Is 100, and I think they said it was like 115,000, 116,000 per year. So they're not hurting necessarily, but a lot of these players, they're coming into the league, after completing college, and or they're coming into the league from overseas, and they're signing their first air quote bigger contract or larger contract, if you will, and
You know,
go ahead.
so like one of the comments on the poll, obviously, we talking about the players, but what gets lost in this obviously is the workers of the stadium. Well, because obviously last season a lot of those workers lost, wages and things of that nature. And then on top of that, you think of players who just come here and sign their first professional contract. Think of a player like Memo. This is supposed to be his first season where he starts making real money, as a professional player for the Dynamo.
Hmm.
Um, it's an unfortunate thing that this is happening. But obviously these labor talks happen. They're always going to be around because there's two sides to this to every story. Um, it happens in every league, so obviously we know it's not something that just it's going on with MLS or the owners are being greedy or the players are not willing to budge. It happens in every league, so let's just hope for the positive, and hopefully we can get out of this unscathed, or if we do get scathed, just not that much, and we don't
But
lose a season out of this.
yeah, so I don't think we lose the season out of it either way, but let's talk about what the ramifications of this are. Let's talk about what the consequences of what's being done what the reality of the situation is. So right now, There's an offer on the table from the MLS Players Association, and if you're curious about any of this, you can read up on it on the Athletic. There was an article from Sam Stejskal earlier today, which really breaks down everything pretty well, and explains kind of where the two sides are coming from. He doesn't really paint it as one side being right over the other, but he does make it very clear who has the kind of edge and the leverage. And it was interesting because I was reading that article, and the owners really do have the leverage in this. And the reason I say that is because let's say there isn't a season, and let's say they do lock out. And again, this is the extreme. I don't think there's any chance we don't have a full, at least a partial season, but I do think there's a very good chance we don't start the season right on time. But let's say that there's not a season at all. The owners have spent no money. The money that they've spent is advertising costs. Those are recouped as basically as tax write-offs. Uh, you know, so any expenses that they've accrued are not going to be player salaries, and that's really in general terms, is kind of the bulk of their expenses as an organization and as owners is where they spend the bulk of their money for most organizations, and that's going to extend to their academies will probably still continue to play, and that's so it doesn't really hurt them in the general sense. And keep in mind, and Sam Stejskal, talked about this in his article, but the owners are in a position where if the season does delay its start, it's probably better for the owners in the long run, or even if there is no season, because if there is a season and we continue with the restrictions that are in place, and they can only have 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% capacity in stadiums, owners don't want to operate that way because they're not going to recover the loss that they sustained last year. Paying player salaries, even though there were initially empty stadiums, and even still late into the season, a lot of places had empty stadiums where fans weren't allowed in at all.
You
And
know,
so, oh, go ahead.
you know, if I'm gonna take the approach of glass half full guy, obviously speaking from I guess from the owner's perspective, maybe even the player's perspective, if the season doesn't start, where I think what they said April 3rd was the proposed start for the season, right?
Hmm.
Let's say it doesn't start till June or even July, and if the season does start then, and then restrictions are lightened and they're able to operate stadiums at 50, maybe even 75% capacity, and then you just shorten the season maybe to from 38 games to 28, depending on how many games you think you can get in. I mean, I guess it'll work both ways for both, because obviously the owner will be making money off match day, revenue, and the players will be able to get their money without any reductions or anything of that nature. I know part of the agreement part of the proposal that's thrown out there by the players is to have no reductions to salary for the season, and no extend for what, 2 seasons, I believe it is. So
Yeah,
extend
2
the
seasons.
CBA. So, it's if you start the season and let's say it's 20% capacity, I could see where the owners would be hesitant to do it, because obviously they're still losing money, they're still not making money, and they're still paying the regular wages for the players. On top of that, everyone else that's working for them underneath them as well, right? But if the season were to start till July and they were able to operate at a higher capacity for their stadiums, it might not be such a bigger blow. It might be, and it might work for both of them. It might be a win-win situation at that point.
It,
But
it's it's see, here's the thing. The longer the lockout goes, and again, I'm operating under the assumption and the expectation that there will be some kind of lockout. The longer the lockout goes, it actually favors the players. The longer the lockout goes, the PR side of it from the owner's perspective gets real bad real quick.
yeah,
Um, and so the longer the players, can hold themselves out and sustain themselves, financially, the better for the players. And the reason I say that is because if the players concede, the players will be giving up their opportunity to grab and to have any stake in and any level of control in the World Cup money that we know that's going to come from the broadcast agreement that comes due in 2027, 2024, I believe it is, 2 years before the
Yeah.
World Cup. And so if the players agree before the season starts, okay, we want to play a full season, and the owners have no pressure on them whatsoever to move away from what they've offered the players, which is to extend the existing CBA, which again, this is the CBA from 2020 from 2019, to extend that CBA or not, sorry, not the 2019. It's the 2020 CBA, to extend that CBA at keeping the year of 2020 and pushing that CBA basically back to 2024. So it won't even start until 2024. So what that means is they would basically lose out on the veteran escalations and the increased salary caps and the increased player funding that would be part of the CBA that was already agreed to back in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, right before the season started. So they've already pushed it back a year to begin with, because the players basically said, "Look, we'll give you, we're willing to ride this season out at a 5% loss anyway." So they already took a 5% pay cut. And
You know,
go ahead.
um, I like one of the questions that Harry's saying here. My question is, for some players, do you jump to a USL while there's a lockout? That way they still get a check, or not an MLS check, but something. I was going to ask this, while we're talking about whether or not the season is going to be pushed back,
Mm-hmm.
since they can't, start on time if they don't reach an agreement. Do you think it's obviously we've seen some players go off on loan, obviously like Jordan Morris
Mm-hmm.
going to Swansea, Ariella going to Swansea, other players as well. Rodriguez going to Almeida in the second division of Spain.
Yep.
Do you think it's wise for players to start looking for other places to play? Because obviously, not all the leagues have closed up their windows yet. I know Portugal's still open for another couple days. Other countries in Europe, obviously not the big five, but other countries, maybe even Liga MX might be a possibility, depending.
Yeah, there are possibilities. Here's the thing that the player has to take into consideration. Number one, traveling overseas is still not the safest thing with COVID right now. Number two, what protocols do those other leagues have in place? What other protocols do those countries have in place? Do those cities have in place? Do those teams have in place to protect the players? And number three, is the player willing to move away from their family? A lot of the players in MLS that are the ones that are going to be most affected by this are going to be the ones that they rely on this salary to pay for the expenses that their family accrues when they're here in the U.S. And those are usually going to be your veteran minimum players, your players that they're not the top of the pecking order when it comes to salaries. And again,
Let's do. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and again, the median salary is only 116,000. So, at 116,000, you can cover your family, you can cover the cost of a mortgage on a house. The expenses can be covered, including travel is needed. But the moment you start looking to go overseas, whatever you get from going overseas, you have to take into consideration your family's probably not coming with you. You're still going to have those expenses here. Now you're also going to have some expenses there, and juggling all the different things that are going to be in play. And then the final thing that players have to take into consideration in making that decision, do I go overseas if the opportunity presents itself, is the opportunity over there to play going to potentially disrupt your opportunity when you get back here? Let's say that they come to an agreement within 3 months. So that would be like summer, like May, roughly.
Yeah.
They come to an agreement in May after having locked out for basically 2 or 3 months. They come to an agreement in May, and now you need to travel back. If there is still a imposed quarantine by the U.S., or let's say COVID gets worse, just in terms of the spread, um, then at that point, do you come back and then you have to self quarantine for another 2 weeks, because that's kind of what they're saying you have to do, and then
Well,
on
I
top of
mean,
that, then you get integrated into the team. So the reason I say that is because I think we tend to forget those extra things. 2 weeks may
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
sound like much, but that's a substantial period of time when you've already missed 3 months of a season, and now you're
But
losing an additional 2 weeks.
yeah, but think about it. I mean, if the season does get locked out, right? That means nobody's getting paid. You know, so let's take a player like let's use Memo for an example since he's the one we mentioned earlier, right? Memo obviously he's got a pay raise, nice little chunk of change. You know, if Juarez from Liga MX said, you know what, we need a player, we need somebody to help us out. We know MLS is starting. Let's go look for players, and they send it, and for whatever reason they pick out Memo and they say, Memo, look, let's come over on a short term loan, 6 months. You go back in the summertime to the Dynamo if MLS is playing. If they're not, we'll extend it to a year loan or whatever. You know, why not? I understand the whole situation of the family, this and that, but these are the lives of professional soccer players. You know, I understand that you want to have your family close and you want to be close to your family and all that stuff and family first. That's all great and dandy, but once those checks don't start coming in and bills start piling up, this isn't the NFL or NBA where your minimum player is making a couple $1 million a season, a year or whatever, and they have some money saved up, even though it is a nice chunk of change annually for them, compared to what I make or you make, but over a long period of time, or a couple of months, it starts to kind of wear on them, especially if they're used to living a certain type of lifestyle.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I do think most of your players that are in that above 500,000 a year range, above even 300,000 a year range, I don't think this is going to touch them too much. I get what you're saying, but I think that they probably have enough in endorsements and otherwise that they can sustain what they have and what they need. Um, I see the couple of questions that came in. Let me go back to the USL thing real quick. I think this is
Mhm.
probably the opportunity where we see some of these players that are they're those players that they're veteran minimum salaries. They're right at that cusp, if you will, of being MLS players. Those players, if there's USL teams knocking on my door, I don't need to worry about additional self quarantines. I'm going to be in the USL, which MLS approved as a in terms of the way that they do. And USL doesn't have limits on domestic players, right? So I mean, I think USL is the landing place, and sure, it may not be as much as you'd make in MLS, but it's an opportunity to play to keep yourself sharp, and who knows, you could help the team that you go to, you could help them become a better team, and have an impact along the way. I mean, it's a perfect opportunity for those type of players. But on the flip side of that, talking about the Liga MX thing, I Liga MX teams are only going to make that opportunity available if they're able to do it within the confines of the roster regulations that they have for their league. And most teams are not going to want to have a guy on 1-2 months if he's going to go right back again, and they're not going to get anything out of it other than just the guy playing. I mean, it's going to have to be it's going to have to be players like Darwin Quintero that can come in and have a true impact in just a month or two. We talk about all the time that players that come in from overseas into MLS, it's difficult for them to adapt, league to league. Same is going to be true for a player that's going to go from MLS to Liga MX. There's a period of adapting that's got to take place, and if MLS turns around and starts in 2.5 months, and your period to adapt is a month, you were basically useless other than being at practice.
No, at the end of the day, obviously, it's something that has to be talked about between the player and the agent. So, like for example, just again, we're going to use Memo because he's the player agent in this
Sure, sure.
example. If Memo goes to his agent, it's let's say it's been 2-3 months already. It's July, August. This summer transfer window time, whatever this and that, and it doesn't look good. And his agent comes to him, look, I have set an X club offer wanting to bring you on loan for a whole year. Obviously, I know there's big plans for you here in the Dynamo. That obviously you're one of the main focal points here in the Dynamo, but we don't know when this is going to start or what's going to happen here. You'll have a year of soccer, a year of making money at X club. So I mean,
Well,
I I
here's the
understand the
problem.
whole.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, like I understand like the whole thing. Obviously, What about when he comes back? This and that. If said player needs to go out and play and they take a year loan because they don't know what's going on here and the club agrees to it, and that's what it is. They have to go and they go play wherever they're gonna go play. I know sometimes we worry about their acclimating back, getting back into fitness shape, or trying to get back in acclimated to the system here. But me as a player and looking out for my family, that's the last of my worries. Worrying about um, how I'm gonna get acclimated back into the system here for a league that can't get started. I'm trying to go get playing time and go get a check.
No, no, no. I got that, but what I'm saying is, you're talking about a player that is likely going to be paid less money. It's not going to be what they're going to get paid in MLS because again, the team receiving that player has no guarantee of how long they're going to have that player. And these aren't we're not at the end of this period once the lockout begins, loans are done. Because what happens at that point is MLS teams no longer control the players. At that point, the players have been locked out, and therefore, even though they are still MLS players, they can go and they can then sign with a team in another league as long as the transfer window for that league is still open as a free
Mhm.
agent. It is no longer a matter of being loaned out. The team no longer controls the fate of that player
Yeah,
during
yeah,
that
I
temporary
I
period.
understand what you're saying.
But the problem is it's a temporary contract. This contract is only valid for the duration of the lockout. Once the lockout is ended and the MLS Players Association signs the dotted line along with the ownership of MLS stating that we agreed to this new collective bargaining agreement, whenever that may happen, at that point those players then revert to being MLS players, and then at that point the club that signed that player with to a temporary contract has lost control. So again, the value of that player is nowhere near what it would be if they were a true free agent on the market. They're not going to get the same salary. They're not going to get the same, opportunities afforded to them. And I think that Harry made a very good point, and I think this is true with Liga MX players as well, or Liga MX teams as well, and other teams from other leagues. Are you willing to bring in a player that may disrupt the opportunity for development of your existing players simply because maybe they turn out to be better for the short period you have them?
See, but I'm not thinking as like if I was in the shoes of just a club looking for somebody to help my team. I'm not looking for a player who's gonna stunt the growth for somebody coming up. I'm looking for somebody who's gonna help me if I have X amount of injuries. Like if something's going on in my club where I need to put a body there, and I can go find a cheap player because and even if I have him only for X amount of time, just to cover that that spot or whatever. I don't mind that, because obviously he's not costing me that much. And if he works out, great. Then what we can discuss with that club with that club or MLS whenever they decide to come back up, and maybe talk about a longer term deal, bringing them over, or a loan, or whatever. Obviously those things don't get neglected because just because MLS decided to start back, in August or whatever. You can make those discussions and negotiations, and then who knows, the player might say, you know what, I like the project over here, and I like the fact that don't have to worry so much about X, Y, and Z. And then now, if I become an official player for this club, we can I can get the agent involved. We can talk a new contract and X, Y, Z. I mean, I'm just different scenarios obviously going on, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna throw it back at you pretty simply, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate. If I'm a team and I have to go into that many what ifs, the opportunity has lost. That player's not coming, and I think that's the reason you don't see a lot of players going to Liga MX right now. That's the reason you don't see Liga MX reaching out to these players because Liga MX teams, unless it's a high profile player, the opportunity for them, it's not there. It's not the value that they
yeah,
get out of the short term is not going to be enough to offset the cost of what they're absorbing. It's a matter of, and the coach has to consider what's the disruption to the opportunity to, yes, okay, I can bring in a Darwin Quintero. Maybe the cost on Darwin Quintero has dropped down to maybe it's 100,000 per month. And that sounds like a lot, but that's actually about a salary, 100,000 per month. So it's roughly about what he'd be paid anyways, right? But at 100,000, am I getting 100,000 out of Darwin Quintero by bringing him onto the team for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, however long it is? And I don't know the duration. So as a team, as a manager of a team, as an operational business, soccer business person, football business person, if I'm looking at this, it is a disaster for me to want to consider that player. And it's because I don't there's too many unknowns and too many what ifs that I can't plan properly beyond that player. I am relying upon that player, and I'm saying, yeah, hey, that player might contribute, they may not. But is it worth me spending that money, worth me putting in the effort on that player when I can go and I can find somebody else that's going to be able to do the same thing? Maybe a player that actually wants to come here, that really wants to be here, that I want to help develop and grow or play in our system and be that same kind of player. Look, these players aren't going to take huge pay cuts to go overseas or to go to another league and play. They'll go to USL because it's in the US, but I don't foresee many players taking an opportunity to go to a Liga MX team, and I don't see a lot of Liga MX teams taking the opportunities on the players because there are too many unknowns. Now, once the lockout starts and we're 4 months into the lockout, if the thought at that point is, hey, this thing might go the entire season, then as a Liga MX team, oh hell yeah, I'm going to buy into that opportunity. But until we kind of know where the negotiations are at and get through this kind of really uncomfortable period, until that is kind of sussed out, it's really hard as a team in any other league to go, with the exception of USL, to go, to go and look at these players and go, yeah, that player can contribute for a month. A month of my season is in terms of when you're looking at loans, you don't even look at a loan for 1 month. That loan you're looking at for half your season usually. So, it's a different situation. We're not talking loans. We're talking free agent for a month or, potentially longer, but you don't know that. Your only guarantee is for however long the lockout is, and that's it. Does that make sense, Mark?
No. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, like, obviously I understand where you're coming from with all the what ifs and all the different scenarios and that would obviously turn you off if you were in charge of a club. And I understand that completely, you know, but it's always, the club's always looking for diamonds in the rough, cheap players and things of that sort, and if you have a whole league of players available, where you can where maybe you scouted somebody, but you just didn't like the fact that he's gonna cost X amount of X, Y, and Z because it typically turns out that Liga MX and MLS transfers are way overpriced sometimes during the time period, depending on who's dealing with who. But it's an opportunity that can open itself up for numerous amount of players depending on how long this lockout goes on.
It can, and like I said, I'm not denying that we may see like a handful of players that do that. I just think that the trend is going to be, if they're going to go anywhere, they're going to go within USL because even though it's going to be a reduced salary, it's going to be the easiest to transition back to their normal team. It's not a huge disruption to their normal cycle. And the other thing is, if they go to Liga MX, let's say that the lockout does last the entire season, they're not going to see their families for that entire season. There's only going to be maybe one or two opportunities to travel away from that team. That team's not going to let that player just travel away on a whim, unless it's a
Yeah.
big name player. And so I like I said, there's a lot of moving parts to the CBA negotiations, to the potential lockout, to all these things, and that's why I wanted to take some time tonight to really discuss them because as you guys clearly show, there's a lot of interest in how this shakes out because there's a lot of there's a lot involved. There's a lot involved for the players' side. There's really honestly a lot involved from the owners' side. It's just that the owners, if a lockout stays for the entire season, it doesn't hurt the owners at nearly as bad as it does the players. The owners they absorb the PR blow, and it's going to suck for the league overall. Their valuations are going to go down, but that they get hit at the bottom line, and that's it. With the players, though,
Uh,
that's your livelihood for a year that you're out of.
Dynamo Insider and Jet says also consider what if the club wants the player permanently. Yeah, and that's always going to be
They
a
can't
what if
because the
scenario.
teams will. That's the problem. The teams will not be able to negotiate with that player or with
Well,
that
what I'm
team for a permanent transfer until the lockout is ended. They will not be able to sign that player permanently. They can't negotiate with the team because the teams will not have control over that player's contract.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, but I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, Dynamo Insider, but I think it's like, so. For example, after lockout is set and dealt with, and they're back, then obviously, now you have if you can talk to the club who owns that player to see if they're willing to transfer them or loan them out or whatever, depending, or make it, official or whatever, you know, that's you just open a door for, for a player to be considered elsewhere. Obviously, if he goes out and does this, and it's a possibility. Obviously, once everything hashes out and the league opens back up, if a handful of amount of players do go to other leagues, they perform well during that short period of time, and that club does desire to have that player stay at his club longer or even on permanent terms, then now you basically had that player on a quote unquote trial on your team for a few months, and now you see that he has the quality and talents to be a part of your team longer term. And now after everything's set with MLS, you can go in there and try to maybe hash out a deal for a full transfer or a loan with an option to buy or things of that nature afterwards, obviously.
And that's a possibility, but I mean, bear in mind this, and and Dynamo Insider also made a good point right before that too. He said unless it's a player with quality or potential, like LAFC's Atuesta, Liga MX won't take them. They don't want another Kubo Torres. I think it's a great point to keep in mind, but there's another piece to that puzzle, referring to the idea of, well, it's a trial, and then after the trial is over, maybe you can have the chance when the lockout's over to make a transfer offer. Sure, but that transfer process, that's not quick. And it doesn't matter
Yeah.
how fast the process goes, it's not quick. It's
No, and
still
I understand that.
and the only
But
reason I bring that up is, again, oh, go ahead.
look, obviously, we understand that, especially being Dynamo fans, we understand that transfers don't happen overnight. It happens, and sometimes it happens a lot longer, a couple of years or whatever. But I mean, and obviously we're here just talking Liga MX, but I think the biggest league that's open still right now is the Portuguese league. I think they're still open for another couple of days or maybe a week or so.
Yeah, I
Let's
think it's
just, for
about I
example,
think it's about like 5 business days or something like that still
yeah,
open.
so like, if for whatever reason a team in Portugal, a first division team in Portugal came out and said, "Hey," came to LAFC, and let's say they want Artesta to come over, since they're not gonna play, let's bring them. Let's say Boavista wants them, since they're our adopted Portuguese club now. Um, you know, I mean that's a really good opportunity for Artesta. Why wouldn't he want to take that opportunity to go play in Europe?
So
Done.
yeah, I'm thinking that's the problem. There, there are going to be players that take the opportunity to try their hand overseas. There are. It's going to happen, and we're talking probably 10 to 15 of the total player base. Um,
Yeah, small amount.
I'm gonna lay it out there pretty plainly. There, you may see one or two permanent transfers that come out of this lockout. Everybody else is going to end up back in MLS, and there's a few reasons for that. Number one, MLS pays their players more adequately than most other leagues, and the reason I say that is
Yeah,
because MLS has
legal law,
huh what.
because they're not gonna let you work for free in America.
Well, yeah, they don't let you work for free in America. No, MLS pays the players, on average better than they're going to get in other leagues. If you're a player of a certain caliber. And if you're not a
Yeah,
player of a certain caliber, you're not going to go overseas because you're not going to, even the offers that you get aren't going to be worth it. Um, and it's going to have to be a league that is willing to pay good money. And I'm you're going to have your opportunities like your Areola to go overseas on loan to Swansea City, your Jordan Morris to go overseas on loan to Swansea City. But if a player hasn't made that move yet, they're not going to make the move, and it comes down to the team that they're gonna that would be looking at them on a trial basis, if you will. They may go over on a trial basis, but there's going to be situations that are just not going to be overcomable. And if I'm the team that's looking at this opportunity, there's just too much involved, even on a trial basis, for this to work out comfortably. It is a very uncomfortable position to be in. And if this was not a player I was looking at before this all shook out, I don't have any room to really leverage the MLS team to try to give me a better deal on a transfer because they're going to want that player back. They have plans for that player. And I'm not about to overpay for a player, even though they've been in my system for maybe 1 or 2 months. I'm not going to overpay for the player to come over. So, from a business perspective, it is going to be extremely difficult for a team to absorb the additional cost for 1 to 2 months on the chance of XYZ taking place and all of these dominoes having to fall into place. Because if one domino doesn't fall into place, I'm out that money that I paid that player, and I could have brought in another player of a similar caliber for the team, and they would have been here for the entire season or longer, potentially. It's we got to remember MLS is not a top tier club, top tier league. So, like I said, I mean, there's going to be opportunities in USL. I think Harry brought it up earlier. I know Houston Dynamo did. Talking about the that RGV are going to benefit from this. I think there are teams in USL that are going to benefit from the lockout. And again, I continue to state that I believe there will be a lockout of some duration. USL teams can bring those players in basically as free agents for probably pretty cheap because the players will be willing to take a pay cut to go play for them. And you could get a player like if I'm an RGV, I could get a Christian Ramirez to start at the top of my lineup. And it's a player you can bring in that's a veteran player, but it's also a player that you can bring in that can generate a little bit of excitement for your area, for your team, for your club. You could have a you could have there's various teams out there that would benefit from a player that might be willing to take a $120,000 contract, which that's high end for USL, but could take that type of contract, go to a team in USL, have a chance to just kind of show what they have, get a little playing time under their belt. But again, it's the how much does it help the team that they're going to? And the answer is with that sort of move, it is not a lateral move. It is a move where that the team receiving them actually has a strong benefit just from a merchandising, just from a publicity standpoint, those sorts of things. But when you're talking about a move that's either lateral or up, it's just a lot harder as a team that's above to look at, bringing those players in.
Harry asked how much damage is it for MLS long term if they miss out on games. I don't if it's in my opinion if it's a 2 month delay where they're not starting April 3rd and they start June 3rd, I don't think it's that much of a much damage. But now when you start talking about August and obviously going to September, things of that nature, then it starts becoming an issue. Because you don't know what's going to go on, and then it comes to a point where the season is almost not played at all. Because the last month of the regular season is October. Your supposed playoff is in November, and things of that nature. So, if it's a 2 month or less layoff, I don't think it's that much of an issue. But if it's anything longer than the 2 months, in my opinion, I think it will start affecting the league a little bit. I'm not sure how much in the long term, unless there's just a complete lockout of the season, and that's when it's going to be much more damaging to MLS. But yeah, in my opinion, if it's less than 2 months, I don't think it'll be that much of a damage issue.
Yeah, I think the only damage that ownership are going to sustain at all from this is going to be the publicity side of it, the PR side of it, and even that, I think that's something they're willing to absorb because again, if they don't play any games at all, or they at least make it through the period where they can't have full capacity in their stadiums, they're not really losing a whole lot. You're talking 20% of revenue, over 10 matches maybe at most. Um, I just I I don't foresee owners going, man, I'm going to suffer such great losses when they suffered some last year. They absorbed the cost and still paid players. They played in partial empty stadiums, or they played in MLS's back tournament, or whatever partially full stadiums. I don't think owners really, honestly, most owners want to go into this season the same way. And I think that's why they invoked force majeure, because they know no matter what they do, they're in a position of leverage in the fact that no matter how this thing goes, they're in a, it doesn't hurt them in the broader sense of things. Now, if it goes long enough, if we're talking 2/3 of the season, it has nothing to do with the revenue they're losing on and everything to do with the PR. The longer this thing goes, the more it becomes very clear what the owners were trying to do, and the more there becomes public scrutiny on it. And the problem is, the longer that goes, the harder it is for them to recover from that. They want to become a top tier league in the U.S. in terms of viewership and and eyeballs and all of that. Well, in interest and intrigue in sponsorships, and you can't do that if you're not playing matches. So they have that to think about, but that considered to balancing out what they've already paid and what they've already lost from last season, and knowing that all they want to do in their minds is just push this, extend the existing CBA for another, as is for another 3 years, and then hey, we'll go back to the table. The thing is the whole reason MLS owners are doing this has nothing to do with them not wanting to pay players. It has nothing to do with them not wanting to play games when there's not capacity in the stadium. It has everything to do with those World Cup broadcast rights. I really wish Kenny was in the chat, because Kenny would back me up on this, but that's what it comes down to. Plain and simple. They want control over that, and they can't control. They don't have control over that if they concede a little bit of that to the players. And that's what the players want. They want to leverage some of that opportunity, for those broadcast rights, around the World Cup. I think if the players have their way, they would opt to, extend this CBA for another 2 years, and then go to the table right before those World Cup broadcast rights come up. Because at that point they will have some leverage, because those are going to be important to the owners. And those will be important to the players. That's what the players want. And the players are not willing to concede some of the stuff that they already put in place from the last CBA. And so, it sucks as fans, because we're affected by this simply by having to deal with it, and having to, it's the sport we love. Let's be honest. All of us love this sport. All of us love this league. All of us love the Dynamo, or hate the Dynamo, depending. But we love the Dynamo. If we didn't love the Dynamo, we wouldn't be as passionate about how much they suck. We would just stop watching. Um, so it sucks
And
for us almost more than it does anybody else. Go ahead.
yeah, and no, and I agree with what you're saying. Obviously, I'm just trying to go back, have a little back and forth about the issue. But another question that's been brought up on the chat, and this is kind of an interesting perspective from Dynamo Insider. What happens to the players that are already loaned out? In our case, obviously being Mateo Bahamic. I think in that case, I think obviously the club, tries to negotiate maybe a longer term loan deal for that player at the existing club, or maybe find him another club with maybe another club that will take him on with bigger competition, I guess, to try to keep his progression going. Um, but yeah, I think that would be the case in that situation with Muhammad, because obviously if he's not able to come to America, why would he leave Argentina to come over here and not play and just sit around and do nothing? So obviously that doesn't benefit the player himself. But yeah, great question, Dynamo Insider. But Sean, let me ask you a question about going back to CBA. Obviously we all know what the players want. We all know what the
Mm-hmm.
owners want. You know, what is the best case scenario for the league short term right now? Like, what would be the, hey, look, this is just the right thing to do right now for both sides to get the
For
season
both
started off,
sides,
to get the season started off on time.
I think it would be the players have already conceded their counter offer back to MLS was that they would concede another year, and then they want to go back to the table basically at the end of 2022. So right before the 2023 season. I think that's the best case, honestly, for both parties. And the only reason I say that it's not the best case for the owners. It's the best case, though, for the greater collective good. And it just simply comes down to the fact that, look, as much as the owners don't want to hear this, the players deserve a cut of that World Cup pie. They're not going to ask for a whole lot, but they deserve a small percent of that. And it's the way it happens in other leagues in the country when there's a big broadcast rights deal. That the players want a part of that, and they deserve a part of that. They're a big part of that now. So, for all parties involved, that's the best outcome. Anything that pushes it beyond 2020, the end of the, or between the 2022-2023 season, I think that is going to be hard, and make it that much harder for the MLS Players Association to go to the table in 2023, 2024, or whenever it is, and start negotiating with a position of leverage. They won't have any leverage at that point because the owners know they can threaten a lockout again, and the players will eventually cave. So it has to be a situation where the owners look at this and go, okay, look, we're willing to concede, but I look at this and from the position of knowing how business people work, owners aren't going to cave at this point. Not on this. Not right away. It's
No,
going
no,
to
no.
take some. It's going to take some external pressure. And trust me when I say this. Reading that Athletic article, I completely agree with Sam Steshkel in that as much as we are a force to be reckoned with from a fan base perspective in terms of MLS fan bases, or the MLS fan base in general, we are but a very small piece of the total,
Right.
the total in terms of viewership and everything like that. And owners are willing to sacrifice us in terms of pissing us off as fan bases in order to try to get what they want, which is they want full control over World Cup broadcast rights. Anyways, go ahead.
So I'm gonna put you in the ownership shoes. What percentage, I guess, of that World Cup revenue or share would be realistic for you as an owner to give to the Players Association, and what percentage would be uncomfortable for you to give out to the players?
Um, I
Because
think.
just the reason I asked that question. So, say for example, like the CBA with the NBA.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
the association, obviously, and let's not kid ourselves. The NBA Players Association is the strongest association out of all the sports in the United States of America. So they have the best deals. you know. So obviously, I'm not expecting it to be anywhere near the close amount of money that they get from their broadcasting rights as the NBA gets for the MLS players. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
so I believe from the last CBA, I think it went to a 55-45 split, or 55 is owners and 45 is players. Um, that's a lot of money because obviously you're getting money from Turner, money from Mickey. Uh,
It's
that's a
not a
lot
lot
of
of
money.
money though. It's not. It's 79 million a year.
What for their
The
TV
current
deals?
CBA, the current broadcast deal, 79 million a year.
But we're just talking about those deals here nationally, but we're not talking. We haven't even spoken about the overseas deals. With the countries, because basketball is a global sport now.
Oh,
You know,
I'm sorry, I'm talking MLS specifically, but yes, completely. You
you
follow
know.
what you're saying. Yes.
So what would be a comfortable amount for you as an owner? To give to the Players Association, MLS players, like you know, and what would be uncomfortable for you?
Ooh, uh, that's so tough, and part of it is that broadcast deal again is going to include those World Cup broadcast rights, and that's where the real money is. As an
Mhm.
owner, if I'm the business guy, I'm my starting position for like how much I'm willing to part with for the players is going to be less than 5%. Now, I'm willing to go up from there, but my top is probably 10 to 15% at most. And that's because I'm coming at it from the position of the players haven't had access to it to begin with. So me offering any bit of that pie is more than they had to start. So 5%
Yeah.
is generous. Maybe I start at 1 or 2%, and I'm like, hey, maybe we'll go up from there. But it is the
You know,
timing of this
I would,
sucks because of COVID.
yeah.
The timing of this sucks because of the broadcast rights coming up when they're up. The timing of this sucks because of everything else that's going on. It is an absolute cluster right now for the players because they're again negotiating from a position of no power and no real flexibility or no real control. Um,
You know,
oh, go ahead.
I asked that question because I was thinking about this. Obviously, trying to see what the standoff is. I mean, because obviously, as the owners of teams and all that stuff, you're trying to make as much money as possible off their product, right? Because I mean, that's the whole purpose of owning something and making money off something, to try to make as much money as you can off of that product or thing, right? And I was thinking about this, like if there was no COVID or anything like that, I would comfortably do a 80-20 split, 80 for the owners and 20 for the players union, right? Now with so COVID and everything going on, I start feeling uncomfortable if they're asking for 85-15. I'm 90-10 is I feel like I'm being really generous.
You're absolutely 100% right. I mean, I'm in the
So
exact same boat with you on that one.
it's funny that you mentioned those numbers, so because that's the way I was feeling off the bat. 15%, that would be
That's
the
me being super generous. Is
yeah, that's
15%.
that's
That's
just me
me.
being that's just me being like, you know what? Okay, I'm not gonna be short sighted. Yeah, I'm gonna get most of the World Cup revenue, but I'm still looking ahead of past the World Cup. Because after this World Cup deal is done, if MLS doesn't skyrocket after that, then the next broadcast deal is going to go back to being, whatever it is currently, or maybe something a little bit better than what it is right now, right? But now that we're in COVID times, man, 10% is probably like the where I'm stopping at, and like you said, if 10% of 10% compared to nothing what you had before. I mean, I'm thinking, dude, I'm being freaking uh generous with y'all, So
So let me piggyback on that. The next thing to consider, and the owners are considering this as well as part of these negotiations and part of the longer term overall negotiations. If I do end up agreeing to, I'm going to use the 5% because I said that my starting is probably 2 to 3%, but let's say they bump it up to 5%. Let's just easier numbers, 5%. Going into the next CBA after that one, which includes the World Cup rights, ends, we're going to be in a position where 5% is the starting point for players. And so now I'm looking at giving up even more than 5% in the next one. And then, and continuing and continuing and continuing, the players are always going to ask for a bigger slice of that pie. So wherever I start at is the starting point at which they're going to get more and more. And so if I'm an owner, I'm not looking to give you a percent. What I'm looking to do is I'm looking to say I will reinvest that money into the league by upping player salaries, or I'll reinvest that money into the league by reducing or increasing the DP threshold, or increasing the average salary of players. I'll increase these other machinations, but I'm not going to give you a direct percent of that pie, because if I do that, I then have to give you another percent of that pie the next time we come up for renewal or for CBA negotiations. Real quick shout out to Houston Dynamo. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Good luck on your show tonight. I will be tuning in at some point once you guys get it up. But thanks for joining us for sure. We do appreciate it, and y'all have a good one. But it's business sucks.
no, it does, but the thing is, like, say for example, like let's stick with your 5%, right, that you're talking about. And let's say that this broadcasting deal, let's just say it's a billion, right? $1 billion deal, because FIFA World Cup, it's the biggest event, X, Y, Z, right? 5% of a billion is 50 million, right? Um, so the thing about that, when you go to the next CBA for the next television deal, not and this is not including the World Cup. Let's say that TV deal is 250. You know, instead of the billion that you got prior because of the World Cup, obviously entity in that deal. and you give them 10%, that's 25. That's 25 mil. So it's a weird thing because it's a weird dynamic because you have the World Cup included in this TV rights deal. And you're not gonna get any other event that's gonna generate as much money as you are with the World Cup. Not even our Super Bowl, generates as much money anywhere near the amount of money as the World Cup does for FIFA. You
Well,
know,
and this one is special as far as broadcast rights go locally because it's a U.S. based, U.S., Canada, and Mexico based World Cup. There's going to be more, there's going to be more intrigue around it locally. So your broadcast rights are more valuable this time around, and that's why you've hit the nail on the head. That is why owners do not want to give any concession related to a piece of that pie or a piece of that money to the players because they understand, or their projection is, even if MLS explodes in a positive way after the World Cup, and broadcast rights in the following are, astronomically higher, the following CBA on that one, maybe those broadcast rights start to go down, and now I'm having to negotiate from a position that I don't have the leverage. Owners are business
yeah.
people. They got their money via being business people. There's not an owner in the league that didn't have to work to get their money in some way, shape, or form. Nobody was truly handed that money. Unlike in the NFL where you
You
can
know,
have a Cal McNair, and fuck Cal McNair. Sorry, just had to say it.
and
But oh, go ahead, go ahead.
see, and this broadcasting deal, I look as a from an owner standpoint, I'm looking at this as my GameStop stock. You know, like I've been investing in this league as an owner for X amount of years, and now I'm seeing the end of the tunnel where I know I'm gonna get a huge payout because this broadcasting deal is tied into us, and it's the World Cup, the biggest event in the world, whatever, right? So I know that I'm gonna finally be able to, make money off my investment that I've done for however many amount of years that I've been an owner in this league. So that's why I understand from an owner standpoint the unwillingness to give out a lot
How
of this piece of pie.
often, let me ask you this question. How often, in regards to labor negotiations, especially dealing with sports leagues in the U.S., have you ever thought you would have sided with the owners, or at least said you can understand where owners are coming from? I can be very honest with you and say this very plainly. I have never felt like, man, I can understand why the owners don't want to do that. I can understand why the owners are kind of hesitant to do that. I've never felt that way. I've always hated that the owners didn't give players more of a percent. But in this case, I kind of understand where they're coming from, and I hate it. I hate that I understand it.
No, because think about it. Think about it. If you think about the richest owner that we have in MLS, which is probably Arthur Blank, right, for
It
the
is
for
Arthur
Atlanta
Blank,
United,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so think about it from his standpoint. This is the extreme point, obviously, because we're using the wealthiest owner, right?
Well, unless you hold on,
Hi-
unless you include Man City, the owners, the owners of Man City who
No, no,
own
I'm
New York City FC.
talking about a single owner, a single,
Oh, then yeah,
whoever
it's
the single.
definitely Arthur Blank. Yeah, there's no doubt. He
Okay,
without a doubt.
so Arthur Blank decides to take on this venture with Atlanta United. He buys into the franchise. He brings the he pays the franchise fee, which I think at that time was a quarter billion or whatever. He puts out a great product, a championship level product. He's obviously investing a lot of his money into scouting, into the personnel, into the front office, X, Y, and Z. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's making a lot of money, because he fills out the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is a 70,000 seat stadium. Obviously, so he's doing well as far as match day revenue and things of that nature. But let's not kid ourselves. If you've been to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the reason why it packs out the way it does is their concession prices are a lot different than what we offer here. You over here you're paying for a $9 soda. Over there you're paying for $2 soda. You know, but that's not neither here nor there. So if obviously this is the extreme point. I don't know how much money he's making off Atlanta United as compared to the Atlanta Falcons, which I'm pretty sure is nowhere near to the amount he's making off the Atlanta Falcons, like he is with the Atlanta United, whatever. But but he understands as a business person. Okay, I bought this franchise for this amount of money. I invested in this franchise because I know that this situation is coming up with this league. You know, so all this money and all this things that I invested into this franchise, I might not be making that much off of this franchise like I am my other teams, but I'm gonna reap the benefits of my investments here pretty soon because of this broadcasting deal. No,
Yeah,
and now
yeah, no, you're right. You're definitely right.
you know,
And
and I think about it from the standpoint of Gabriel Brenner. You know, somebody who realistically he doesn't. I mean, the match day revenue for Dynamo games, I, I can only imagine that much. Unfortunately, the stadium doesn't sell out. There's no hype really around the team because of the quality of the team has been piss poor. XYZ. So for a owner like in his standpoint, you know, if he's still owner by then, and he's able to hold out and get that money, imagine what kind of return on his investment he receives, you know, because he played the waiting game, you know. Obviously, it's different if he sells this year or whatever, and then somebody else comes in, but you know, it's one of those things where much as we always
oh, Marcus frozen. It's pretty great. So real quick, I'm gonna
owners
roll. Oh, Mark's.
the
I wanna let Mark
bad
finish his thought.
guys because
Mark, you're chopping up so bad right now.
they're always
We're,
worried about
you're like 20, 30 seconds. Yeah, he's lagging out bad. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do a quick little ad roll, guys. So 30 seconds. Hang in there with me real quick, and that gives Mark a chance to kind of get the connection problem cleared up. Oh, he dropped off fully. So 30 seconds, and then we'll be back, guys. 30 seconds, and we'll be back.
I don't know what I have.
Yeah, no, we're good. I was just doing. We're doing an ad. I know they can hear us, which is fine. Back momentarily. We got about 3 seconds, guys. All right. Thanks for hanging in there,
Sorry about
guys.
that.
Mark is back, so we'll let Mark kind of restart that thought because we lost you like 10 seconds into that thought, and it was like dead. Like you were completely lagged out.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I have no idea what happened on my side, but everything looks to be working fine now. But no, but I'm just saying, obviously, I'm never one to side with the owners, obviously, in these when it comes to these standoffs, because obviously, it's it's the whole endless tale of billionaires versus millionaires, right? But not necessarily in this case, with MLS, because we know like majority of the players are not making millions, they're kind of the average Joes out here, and a lot of these players have they have side gigs and things like that stuff. But when you look at it from a business standpoint and from the owner side of it, you understand why they're so firm on holding on to their position and their leverage. Understand it, you know, and it's an unfortunate thing because you hate understanding it because it's business and it's really shrewd, but as a fan, you don't want it to interfere with your soccer and your football and all the other stuff, but it does. It's an unfortunate thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it comes down to is there's and as incredible as it is, there really are fair points to be had on all sides of this thing. And anytime that's the case, nobody wants to really negotiate away from their fair point. And with the owners, and real quick, I'm going to answer actually Dynamo Insider's question. He said, "Well, how about partial owners like Kevin Durant, James Harden, Steve Nash?" what would be their pros and cons, and what amount of say do they have in all this. I'm gonna tell you right now, they have no say in any of it whatsoever. This is being handled by a committee of owners, and there's only really 5 to 6 owners that are involved in this, and 2 of those owners are Robert Kraft and Dan Hunt. Neither of which are very good owners in my opinion for MLS. They're owners of long-standing, very FC Dallas and not New York, New England Revolution. They're 2 of the long-standing owners. They're 2 very shrewd business people, but the flip side of that is also that they're not 2 of the bigger clubs in the league. And they don't feel pressure from the bigger clubs in the league right now because the bigger clubs in the league, they can afford the losses, and they're not going to be pressured by the little clubs in the league. Because they're just not gonna feel that pressure. Who I feel most
Yeah.
bad for is like an Austin. God, I can't even believe those words came out of my mouth. I feel bad for Austin because you have all this hype and all this energy and all this momentum, and then now we're going to lock out the players. How is that going to affect their fan base starting out? How many of their
Oh,
potential fans are going to be turned off by that?
think about Miami, Nashville.
Mm.
Miami. I mean, Nashville. At least they were able to get their home opener in last season, where they sold out the Titans Stadium, so they had that one great moment. Inter Miami didn't even have a chance to open their stadium, or have a full capacity stadium at all. And then this is going to the second season, and they're going to go through the same thing again. That sucks. That sucks really
It's
bad
probably
for.
not a terrible, it's probably not as bad for Miami though, considering how bad they were last year. It's probably a blessing
Yeah,
in disguise for them.
but still, I mean, but regardless of the fact, it's a brand new product. Your people are excited about it. You have Beckham backing it, which Beckham, regardless if you love him or you hate him, he always brings in the crowds and things of that nature. But uh, yeah, it's just this situation with the COVID kind of just threw a wrench in everything. It's already hard to negotiate these type of deals, but then you just throw something like COVID-19 and lost money from endorsements, from match day revenue, things of that nature. It just makes it that even more tougher to negotiate. And just to go back to we were talking about the partial owners like Kevin Durant and James Harden. Those guys are just there for the ride. Whatever they got a little piece of share of the pie of the team that they own, and whatever happens to that team, its value increases. All that means is there's more money in their pockets.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mentioned it earlier when somebody had mentioned on Harden or mentioned it elsewhere about what's the impact of Harden, and I'm like, nothing. He ain't feeling this right now. You don't care. He's distracted. He's busy. Ness made the point that all Harden is thinking about is the Raptors coming up in like a day or two when Brooklyn takes on the Raptors. I completely agree. I think the same is true for Kevin Durant. I think the same is true for Steve Nash. Look, they're not feeling the weight of this. I guarantee you. But it's so let's take a moment here. And we put this out on Twitter. I put this out on Twitter. I actually didn't discuss it with Mark, but I know he felt the same way, so I didn't bother. But we clearly we do support the MLS Players Association. We support that. They deserve the right to play the game they love. And as much as we understand where the owners are negotiating from, we support the players' negotiating point. And the truth is that it's time they get a little bit bigger, slice of that pie, whatever that part of the pie or whatever part of the pie they want to take. There's definitely they sacrificed so much last year, and these owners sacrificed so little. Owners will say, "Well, we only made it a 5% pay cut." Oh, boo, freaking who? 5% pay cut was less than 20 million across the entire league. You're not that. That doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. You gave a 5% pay cut because it was in your best interest. You wanted to still play matches so you could at least get some of that broadcast revenue and some of that sponsorship revenue rolling in. Fact is, the owners deserve to give, or the players deserve to be given more concessions than they did in even the previous CBA before the force majeure. They put themselves in that position with the force majeure being added But to be fair, the owners definitely did not have to go that route. They did because it was a bit, in their opinion, was a smart business move. But where we are right now, the owners, the Players Association, they need our support more than ever as a fan base. It was released today or statements were released today by the NBA Players Association, the WNBA Players Association, and the MLB Players Association, showing their support and throwing their support behind the MLS Players Association and their position in this potential lockout and negotiation process. And I think that speaks a lot because these players associations that are not MLS understand that whatever happens with this MLS Players Association and MLS ownership negotiation process and lockout, this is going to have a profound impact moving forward on those leagues as well. Because if the players can somehow eke out a win of some kind against owners that are in this position that they're in of having the stronger leverage at this point, then other players associations can lean on that to show that, hey, we can fight this a little bit stronger. We can work to get a little bit more out of what than we're getting already. And I think that's important, and I think that's vital, and I think that's necessary. And if there was ever a time for the Players Association to stick their feet in the ground and say we're not budging, this is it. And some of that has to do with the sentiment across society right now around those who have absorbent amounts of money versus those that do not. And with all that said, I will say it, I fully support the MLS Players Association. I am certain that Mark will echo that sentiment. But we want you to know, if you echo the same sentiment, please do us a favor. Go on Twitter, go on Facebook, go on whatever social platform you have, and use the hashtag let them play 2021. Show your support and put a little bit more pressure on on owners across MLS to rethink their position. Feel free to even tweet at the Houston Dynamo Twitter account. They're going to hate me saying that, but hey, guess what? Sorry, guys. Y'all got this one coming. But put a little pressure. Let's show them that, in the agreement that has been, or the deadline that has been set forth is technically tomorrow, but they have truly until the February 22nd, so they have 19 days roughly to come to a full agreement to not have to delay the start of the season at all. But I don't foresee this happening by the 22nd. But I think the more that we can get some social media buzz going, and the Players Association can get some media, social media and media buzz going using that hashtag, the more likely we are to see and to show that as a fan base, even though owners, believe we're just a drop in the bucket in terms of their prospective viewership numbers, we are a force to be reckoned with. And there has never been a better time to prove it. And I'm going to simply end that statement with the example shown over the last 2 weeks in relation to the Wall Street Bets and GameStop and AMC, and it was brought up in chat. Look, we all know what's going on there. It's the little guy standing up and saying, "I'm done taking your you know what, and I've figured out how to game the system and how to work the system to my benefit as well." And look, this is our time to show that we are a fan base that's willing to be loud, and we're willing to be strong, and we're not going to back down. As much as I want games, as much as I want matches, I side with the players first and foremost, whatever that form that takes.
Yeah, I mean, and guys, look, if you want games that bad, if I have to get on here on Twitch and stream me playing FIFA, I'll do that for you. So,
Hey,
you
hey,
know,
hey, hey, I'll join. Look, I play Rocket League now. We got a bunch of us playing Rocket League too, so we'll give you stuff to watch. That's how
yeah,
SGL came around. Supporters Gaming League.
for sure, for
That's
sure.
how that came around last year, was right as COVID hit and people were trying to figure out something to do. A bunch of the supporters groups, namely the Surge, decided to start something, and Supporters Gaming League was launched. And there's a link on our Twitch page to go check it out. But There's a bunch of team supporters groups that are playing Rocket League on a weekly basis. They're getting ready to hit playoffs. So I mean, talk about a fun time to jump in and start watching this this weekend. I think Friday, Saturday starts playoffs. Uh, and then of course, yeah, there's FIFA. You know, FIFA is massive, and I have an Xbox One, but that's the only platform I have FIFA on. I probably should look at getting it for the PC. But you know, we'll see how things shake out. I definitely, like I said, I'm interested to see how this all goes, and I hope the players don't back down. I hope they don't. I hope they, even though they feel pressure, I hope they realize this is their opportunity to prove something, and I think they do need to prove something. And I think it'll be positive for them in the long run, but it's not going to be comfortable for a while. But anything else to add, Mark? We're kind of at the end of the show here, trickling down to the very last minute.
Yeah, no, I think you said it all. I mean, obviously, I totally agree with what you're saying. We do support the players and what they're trying to achieve with this, with this CBA labor talks and all that thing, all that good stuff. Hopefully, it gets done. And obviously, selfishly, as a fan, I hope it doesn't interfere with a lot of the games coming up for the season. But if it does for the greater good, then so be it. I don't mind losing a season if it's going to be better for the players in the long run or whatever. But yeah, guys, I mean, just hang in there. Hopefully, it doesn't pound us to the floor, all these labor talks and things of that nature. Um, you know, hopefully we don't have to keep having shows about CBAs and labor talks here too much after. But we'll see. We'll see what
But if
happens.
we do, we'll find content to continue bringing to you because we do appreciate you guys as a fan base of us, as viewers of us, and for guys like you, Dynamo Insider and Dynapod, who was on earlier, and Harry, I know you got stuff going on too. We appreciate all the coverage you guys provide and all the work you guys put in. Trust us, we understand how exhausting it can be at times and how much work and effort you put into it. And this is without a doubt a labor of love. But hey, if you guys are Twitch Primes or if you're Prime subscribers on Amazon Prime, make sure you hit that Twitch Prime follow sub button. That sub button, that's what it is, the sub button. Give us that free sub, y'all, for 1 month. I'll take it. Real quick thoughts on the
Uh,
Philadelphia Union away kit. I'll be honest, I like it. I personally like it. I think the lightning bolt design is becoming a cool thing, and I kind of like that it's unique, and it kind of reminds me of when the Dynamo released their lightning bolt design with the that orange kit, the Tigris kit, if you will. It was unique enough that it caught everybody's attention in a positive light, and it was the only kit that year, kind of like Phillies this year, and so far that had any real flair to it. And we were considered to have the best kit of all the kits that were released that year. So I like it, and I'm hopeful that maybe our kit this year is really kick ass, but we'll find out soon enough.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's cool. It's a cool kit, obviously a lot different than what we're used to from seeing from Philadelphia, which I think that's what they're going out for. Something with flair, something unique. It kind of reminds me of when Nike took over the NFL jerseys and the Seattle Seahawks went like completely left as opposed to everybody else. Yeah, and that's always cool. I like the fact when the manufacturer gives you creativity, instead of having the same plain, set for each team. All you do is just put the team colors on that set, which is kind of lame in my opinion. But um will we have a white kid? Honestly, for my am I, I don't know, man. I love I love the black away kits, man. Like you can never go wrong with black. I know we had the white kits for such a long time, and obviously now it's been what 3, maybe 4 seasons now that we haven't had a white kid. Sometimes it can be something which would be nice to have come back, maybe as a third kit. But man, I just the black away kits, man. They just I don't know. They haven't really missed on those. So I don't know if you can get away from the black kits too much.
I think the black kits and the current the orange kit that we have, I think it's so difficult for the Dynamo to move away from that color combination. And look, they've the color of the crest. There's no white in that.
Yeah.
I think they've made it very clear they have no desire to be a white team, if you will. God, that sounds terrible, but you know what I mean by that. They don't desire to be a white team, and type of club. And I think that's good. I think that's what they need, and I think that's what it sucks because this rebrand timing, with the CPA possibly leading to a lockout. Talk about crappy timing, but hopefully they've got a kit design that's on par with what Philly released, or Philly is teasing and showing off. Because if it's anywhere close to that, I'm down for it and I'll probably buy it. If it's a solid white kit and there's only a little bit of orange accent, I may buy it. If it's a solid white kit and there's some orange and some black, I'm more likely to get it. But we'll see. I haven't seen any leaks. I haven't seen any previews. I'm just as in the dark as you guys are, at
I
least
guess.
currently. But trust me, once I know, I'll give y'all some hints. But until then, I'm just in the dark.
Yeah, I guess that's good for us, for myself and for Nestor, that that the Dynamo aren't a white team anymore.
uh, all I'll say, and this we're gonna end on this note. All I'll say in response to that is, yeah, but the Texans still are. All right, boys, hold it down. Hold it
I'm a,
down.
I'm a cheesehead, so it's all good.
Oh, there you go.